Amazing. 3, 2, 1. Woohoo! We are live. Are we live? I think we're live.
Yes, we're live. Hi.
Party.
Welcome to Refuat Hanefesh live conversations. We have Yosef Gillers today, who is very excited to be with us, and we're very excited to have him as well. The title for tonight's conversation is Cultivating Healthy Habits Through Nature. And we're going to be talking about the mental and physical benefits of nature, which fortunately can be found throughout this beautiful world that Hashem created for us. During the conversation, if anybody has questions, you can either post them on Facebook, or you can send them anonymously to info at refuathanefesh.org, and we will try our best to get to them. So tonight, we're joined by Yosef Gillers, a friend of mine. He is the founder and executive director of Grow Torah. And through Grow Torah, he has been inspiring Jewish youth, mostly on the East Coast of the country, but hopefully throughout the country in the near future. Since 2017, he's been creating educational gardens. And he's doing this to fulfill his mission of cultivating a more passionate, compassionate, and sustainable future driven by Torah values.
Nailed it.
And tonight, we're going to be talking about a lot of old ideas, things that we've really known for millennia, but things that bear repeating, especially in this day and age, when people oftentimes spend more of their waking hours in front of screens instead of going out and exploring this amazing world that we have. I think this week especially is a very apropos week to speak about the benefits that we could find in nature and gardening. Because this week, coming up next Shabbos, we're going to be talking about the spies. And one of the things that the spies set out to do when they went to visit Eretz Yisrael was to see what kind of people were there. The Psukim talk about how they were going to look, are they strong people? Are they weak people? Are there a lot of them? Are there few of them? And the Sforno comments that the reason that, they were looking for this is because, as doctors have been telling us for ages, you could tell a lot about the climate, a lot about what the place is like based on the people that live there. Right? We've known for a very long time that when you're in a tranquil place, when you're in a place that leads to health, the people are going to look more healthy. And so we're going to talk about that tonight. And without further ado, I'd like to start, Yosef, and thank you so much for being here with us. I'd really, I think I would like to hear more about Grow Torah, and I think our people here that are listening tonight would like to hear more about it as well. So if you could please tell us just a little bit about why you started Grow Torah and maybe a little bit more about what it is.
Absolutely, Ariel. Thank you so much. It's really awesome to be here, everyone. So I started Grow Torah for a few reasons, actually. One of them was to bring more nature into the Jewish day school system. Another piece of that, and actually kind of the goal of that, is to bring nature in to help our entire community connect with Torah and mitzvos through the beauty of nature. And then there's like a few other pieces that are kind of other systemic problems in our community or challenges where we're not really as committed to environmental issues as I think we ought to be. And we're not really so committed to animal welfare issues and compassion for creatures as we ought to be. And we can always give more tzedakah. So that's kind of another way of saying our 4 core values that we teach in our programming, which is incubating emunah, environmental stewardship, compassion for creatures, and tzedakah. Those are the 4 core values we try to teach in every session in our gardens. And what we do is we build gardens in schools, and then my team and I, we go out and we teach in these gardens every week of the growing season. So up in the Northeast where we live, for all you folks around the rest of the country, we love you too, and you do exist. New York is not the center, but that's just, we're based in New York, New Jersey. So we build the gardens in the schools, and we teach in those gardens. And it's really incredible to get to see what the students get from that. Well, we'll get to that in a minute, but that's kind of why I started it. And what we're trying to do, we're at 12 schools right now, thank God. And please God, next summer, we're shooting to add 10 more. So we're going to spend all year doing a whole lot of work, but really want to bring this to every single Jewish day school. There's just so much you can teach through a garden. And one of those things that you're not even teaching, you're just giving the students the experience of, is the positive habits that we're going to talk about tonight.
Well, I mean, that's a phenomenal growth rate, to go from 12 to planning to go to another 10 in the next year. Obviously, people seem to be buying into what you're doing. It sounds like you're having some tremendous success.
Thank God. Yes, we're really lucky. People love the work that we're doing. And we also get really helpful constructive feedback. We're very imperfect. And we welcome that. If you're listening and your kids go to our schools and you have something, please shoot us an email on our website. Totally love the feedback. It really helps us. But yeah, thank God. That's kind of, we were at 6 schools last year at this time. So we doubled last year, and we're going to less than double for next summer.
But still pretty fantastic.
Thank God.
So, I think intuitively, a lot of us know how beneficial nature is. Some studies that I looked up cited that 2/3 of people, when they're stressed, their go-to thing to do is to go somewhere where there's a little bit more nature to relax a little bit. 95% of people report that they have improvement in their mood and stress levels after spending time outdoors. One study that I saw even said that, the amount of time that you spend outdoors and the engagement you have with nature has twice the effect on your longevity, how long you're going to live, compared to the healthcare system that you use. So whether you're in a third world country or first world country, it's actually more beneficial to interact with nature than to have that great healthcare system. But so I'm wondering, I want to hear more about what exactly it is that Grow Torah does. What techniques are you using, especially if you're in the Northeast? Unfortunately, there is some nature there, but where a lot of people live, it might be a little bit less. So what does Grow Torah do to bring that nature to people?
That's a great question. I would say, to start, just like right off the bat, we don't do enough. We totally don't get the students in the garden as much as we should. But what we do, which I think is meaningful, we get them out, and when they're in the gardens, it's really incredible to get to see. I mean, you can see beauty in the tiniest things. So we'll really encourage students to taste a piece of a lettuce plant and just really enjoy that, or smell, a lavender leaf. It's like this big. It really is this big, and the beauty that you get to experience with all your different senses, seeing this pretty little leaf, touching it, it's a soft, fluffy, actually kind of velvety texture, and then smelling it, you get 3 senses engaged with this tiny little thing, and there's a special bracha involved in it. That's just super awesome that we get to do that and engage with seeing the beauty in the small things. And I think that's actually a really big piece of what we're doing also is trying to help students find the beauty in the small things and see all the beautiful nature that does actually surround us so much. Even in New York City, we always joke about our 2 Brooklyn schools, the gardens grow in Brooklyn, but they're flourishing, thank God. And the students get to see oh my God, I can grow an eggplant in Brooklyn. This is so cool. And that sentiment is actually another piece that I think is really, really meaningful from a mental health perspective, just feeling that sense of accomplishment. I grew this plant. That can really last with you. And I think there's a few different elements of that are really meaningful. One is just that sense of accomplishment. You feel good about yourself. That's always, Dr. Mintz, you can back me up here, right? It's good to feel good about yourself.
Yes.
So, especially when it's based on something substantive that you've actually accomplished that. So I think that's really meaningful. And then from a broader perspective, helping students connect to the bigger picture, the food system, just where does our food come from, and thinking about that can really lead to developing much healthier habits. And another really wonderful benefit is just we see our students eating more vegetables, and vegetables are healthy, and physical health and mental health are intertwined. So it's a special thing. So I would say, in a word, trying to help students see the beauty of everything from big to small.
Yeah, and I think that's really phenomenal. When I first heard about Grow Torah, I think I thought more just really you're getting people in nature, but it sounds like you go way beyond that. There's a whole mindfulness component. It sounds like you're showing people the beauty of the Torah, being able to make the bracha on things, where it comes from, really thinking about, all aspects of how food is made and giving people a little bit of agency and ability, understanding that they could do it themselves. All of that is definitely going to go into making a better self-esteem for a person, as well as kind of taking them away from maybe some of the everyday hassles that might be a little bit more stressful and lead to some, decreased mental health. So, that's fantastic.
That actually, I don't know if you were about to ask me about this, but I was just going to say one of the things that's really awesome is if your hands are full of soil or dirt, it's hard to hold a cell phone and text or Instagram. I'm glad I dropped my phone. There we go. Unless you need to tell me. So it's really, really cool. And I mean that. It is really, really awesome to get to see students, especially with our high school students who are definitely a lot more involved in their phones, come out to the garden and, they come out with their phones out and they're like, oh my God, this flower. And I'm like, cool, do you want to pick it? It might be easier if the phone's not in your hand.
So, that makes me wonder, have you had resistance? Have there been high school kids who just say, that's not cool, I'm not doing that?
Yeah. So we actually, we do with the elementary schools, it's like a specialty. Like they would have music or they would have art, their class comes to the garden and they have a class in the garden. Whereas in the high schools, it's really much more of an elective or a club. So the students come on their own. So the students that are coming to the garden in the high school clubs are coming there because they want to, because they've made that choice. So they're already there. But even those students are coming out with their phones out sometimes. And it's fun. We take lots of pictures, which is fun but we really encourage them to like take a picture and then put the phone away. If you want to share it with social media, share it later when you're like, I don't know, on the train or something. But while you're in the garden, just like enjoy it and
Sure.
really connect with it.
There was a really interesting study I saw that was published just last year in the Journal of Positive Psychology, where they broke 3 different groups into 3 arms. They had one group that would walk through the city looking at all the amazing buildings and the train, all the amazing man-made things that are out there. Another group would just appreciate the little weeds in the sidewalk, or if they walk by someone's house that has a little plant, just really basic types of nature that you see in any city. And the third group was just go on with your life, living it how you are. After 2 weeks, they measured all 3 of these groups, and maybe not surprisingly, they found that just in the group that was looking at just a little bits of nature, even the weeds, they had a significant increase in their happiness and social connectedness. And the third group, or the first group, the group that was looking at the man-made objects, even though we know that appreciating things typically is very beneficial, they actually didn't show any increase in any of their happiness compared to the group that went on living their life as usual. So even in a place like Brooklyn, even without Grow Torah, I think it's increasing with Grow Torah, but there are plenty of opportunities for people to recognize nature and to really get some of the benefits from it.
So what's really fun is, you brought up like looking at the weeds and all the plants. In the gardens, we get tons of wild plants. And a lesson that I love to share, it's kind of one of our signature lessons, is that weeds are totally relative terms. So here's a little fun Grow Torah for you right now. If you're looking at our faces, I can still inspire you with the beauty of nature through my speech. So weeds is a total relative term. If you think about grass on your front lawn, that's not necessarily a weed. You want it there. But grass in your garden is totally a weed. You don't want it there. And so it's just a crazy thing to think about. Like, wait, I could want this in one place and totally not in the other. And in one place, I think it's evil, and I might, chas v'shalom, of course, use like horrible chemicals to kill this plant. But like 5 feet that way, I'm like spending a ton of money to grow it there. So it's a really interesting thing. Just like every little one of those weeds is actually a real plant, and it has incredible benefits. And one of the really cool things I love to share is many of the weeds are actually totally edible. They're really resilient plants, and the reason that they're growing in that place is because they can make it through they can handle the tough soil, and they can handle the tough conditions. And so a really common one that a lot of our kids love to eat is this thing called wood sorrel or lemon hearts, and they're like literally heart-shaped leaves, and they're super sour. Israelis call them chamtzutzim. So it's just like, it's crazy how much beauty there is in nature. Even like the tiny little things that we think are the bad things are actually good and like super nutritious. There's so much beauty there for us to get to experience. And so I love doing that. And the lesson that we do with weeding is during Refuat Hanefesh and like Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur season, like the tshuva season, repentance, we're like trying to be better versions of ourselves. So we like to think of the weeds as not bad things, but just traits or habits. They represent traits or habits that are not necessarily our ideal self flourishing. And so we'll, especially with the high school students, we'll do like silent weeding for a few minutes, and just like while you're pulling out those weeds from the garden, just think about those habits that are just getting in the way of you being your best self and the best Evet Hashem that you can be. And I love doing that, and I always do it with the students, and I always have like this like whoa aha moment, and then like tefillah. It's just a great cycle.
It's an incredibly inspiring mashallah. I love that, and I'm gonna definitely going to be in my mind this coming Rosh Hashanah, and yes. Anytime I pick weeds in my garden.
it's so good because you're just like, buy bad idea, buy bad trait, like buy Yitzhara, just get out of here. You don't need to be here.
Sure. So am I understanding with your gardening, so you will pull weeds while recognizing that they're not all bad?
Exactly. They're not all bad, and they actually have a place. Like the example I always give with the younger students is like, hey, shouting out in the middle of class, you probably have something really special to say. It's just the wrong time. You got to raise your hand and wait for your teacher to call on you. That's all. What you're saying is actually incredibly valuable. It's just the wrong time. It's not that it's evil inherently. It's just in the wrong place at the wrong time. The grass that's growing in your garden is just growing in the wrong place at the wrong time. The grass is supposed to grow on your lawn, if you even do that. I mean, who does grass lawns anymore, right?
The Midwest, we have a few of those.
Just pollinator flowers, folks. Just pollinator flowers. No more grass lawns.
I don't even know what that is.
I'll help you there.
Yeah, you're going to have to move out to the Midwest to teach some of us that have these big lands and think we're supposed to be planting these grass weed all over the place and get rid of all the other stuff.
Nah, you don't need that stuff.
So tell me more about kind of just anecdotally. So what are maybe some of the physical benefits you may have seen either with yourself or with some of these students that have engaged in your program?
So I'll speak personally for a minute. Just getting to spend, I mean, thank God, running the organization now, it's becoming a pretty, significant size and operation. And I actually am finding myself really enjoying kind of the organizational side and running it and learning all of that. But I find my best days are when I have like an hour or two or a few hours teaching the students in the garden, just like really immersing in nature and teaching through it and really being involved in it. And then I like sit down on my computer for a couple of hours or that night and do some work. And it's just, my perspective is just totally shifted from if I spend the entire day in front of the computer working. And just the past few years, as I've been able to do this more and more full-time and now totally full-time, it started just part-time, just the amount of like, that what I was mentioning before, the like feeling that sense of accomplishment, I just like feel so good about it. Like I grew this carrot, and even still, when I pick a sugar snap pea, like today, I was picking sugar snap peas this morning with a bunch of families. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And you just, that feeling is so special. So I know I'm like, sound like a broken record about that sense of accomplishment, but it's huge. I think it's so important. And the other piece, just like the wow factor, the Mara Abu Ma'asecha Hashem, like how incredible is your world? Every time we walk into the garden, there's always something else amazing. And I get to see it with my staff. Every time we go into a garden together where we're like doing maintenance or we're kind of like, I'm observing them teaching, and like we get to the garden before the students and we haven't been there in a day or two or a few. And it's like, oh my God, look at the flowers. It's so incredible. There's just this like rush of emotion that is, I can barely describe it with words. It just feels so special. And then the students get that. They come out to the garden, it's, let's say it's on the side of the school or it's in a courtyard, and and they come out, and you just get to see the kids. And they're just like, wait, what? That's wheat? Like, that's going to become bread? What? And they like freak out. They're so excited. It's really, really cool. And then, and this one totally depends on the age. But, you know, I mentioned the compassion for creatures. So when we find a worm, it is the funniest thing to listen to the different reactions that we get in the same class, different ages, everything. It's amazing because so many kids, and so many more than I ever would have expected if you told me this 5 years ago before I started doing this, are like, oh, a worm! This is awesome! Can I touch it? Can I pick it? Can I touch it? They're like so excited to just see that. We're from Adam, Adama, we're from the ground. That's just where we're from. So we have this visceral connection with nature. And when we get to really experience it, you lead the way, my man.
All right, we're back. Sorry for those technical difficulties. I'm here again with Yosef Gillers, the founder.
We went outside to go farming.
That's right. We needed a little bit of a farming break. But now we're back. We picked some radishes and some weeds and some grass, and we had some good times. But now we're back with Yosef Gillers, the founder and executive director of Grow Torah. And before we got cut out, before he was telling us some fantastic anecdotes about the benefits that he's seen both for himself as well as for some of the students that have been involved with Grow Torah. And so I'll have you pick it up again, Yosef.
Amazing. Yeah, I was just sharing some of the anecdotes, and I was starting to talk about this really, really cool thing we get to do at our summer camp. Can I pick up there, Ariel?
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Great. So we do a 1 week summer day camp, and it's on this organic farm, like 30 minutes out of New York City. And we have chickens, we have goats, and 25 acres of preserved organic farmland. And something I got to see last summer was just how much the animals and non-human creatures mean to some kids. It is just a totally different experience for those kids. And they shine in a whole new way. And it was really, really special to get to see that with our students. I mean, with our campers, some of the campers, they wanted to just spend like an hour at a time with the chickens, just holding the chickens. And it was so, so special. And I think part of that kind of taps into just like what it means to be human. You're alive, you're real. And when you see other living things, other living beings, you really feel that in a serious way. And I didn't actually grow up with pets. I had a fish in high school, but that was it. Rutherford was his name. But I do think that there's something really special about that. And gardening, you know, and just seeing plants living, they're living things. You see them grow. I think there's something about that growing process that's just like incredibly inspiring in a deeply human way.
Yeah, and that's, you know, very interesting. I mean, and there's so many studies backing up what you're saying. You know, one particular study that I like that I'll quote is, you know, there was a study out of the University of Illinois several years ago. What they did is they looked at some of the public housing communities, some of the buildings there, and randomly they chose some buildings to plant trees around, and other buildings they left as is. And what they found is that the buildings that they planted the trees around, the residents of those buildings reported, you know, feeling better about themselves as people. They reported, you know, getting to know their neighbors more, feeling increased unity with them. They found that crime, you know, both theft and domestic violence and violence against other people, it went down 52% just by planting these trees around the building. Really some remarkable findings. I think since then, Chicago, they actually, you know, learned from this and has been planting more trees around some of these buildings. And again, it doesn't need to be, you know, going out into the wilderness, which is fantastic. We know it's a type of therapy. You know, ecotherapy is, you know, fantastic. It really works just putting people in nature. It has fantastic benefits. But again, you know, any type of community, if you go into, you introduce some nature to them, gardening, whatever it is, we're seeing benefits, which is fantastic.
It's a special thing I get to do.
Yes.
So
Okay, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's really just every time I see a student come out and just like show that joyous expression of like, ah, a radish, like this is the best sugar snappy I've ever had in my life. Quote verbatim 2 weeks ago. There's just something you can't replace that. You can't. There's not. You can't fake that. You can't do that in any other way. It's just that's the only way to do it.
Sure. I'll start. We do have a couple of questions coming in, and so
Okay. Sure.
Our time's going to be a little bit short because of our technical difficulties. So I'll start asking some of them. And so we had a user or a viewer ask, what do you suggest for people who don't have the time to garden, but would still like to connect to nature? And in parentheses, they say more than simply taking a walk. And I'll add to that question as well. What do you suggest for people who don't know anything about gardening? Maybe they'd love to garden. They have a space to garden, but they don't know what a snap pea is. They wouldn't know what the poisonous leaves are and the delicious sour ones are.
That's a super awesome. Those are super great questions. I'd say number one thing is start small, whatever you're gonna do. So I know this question wasn't like, I want to start a garden. How do I start a garden? But the advice I give to everyone who always says, I want to start a garden, I say start small. And so for this too, I would say start small. One easy thing is like houseplants, and it's really easy to get carried away with houseplants and like try to put tons of plants everywhere. We just moved and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna put plants everywhere. But start small and just one plant at a time. And there are tons of easy houseplants. I mean, you can even just Google it, like easiest houseplants to take care of. I personally, we used to live in Washington Heights. Shout out, God bless. We could only grow bamboo in our apartment. We got absolutely no direct sunlight. And so we grew bamboo in empty whiskey bottles. And there was a great metaphor. My friend wrote a song about it. It's called Bamboo in a Whiskey Bottle.
You wrote the song after finishing the whiskey bottle so you could plant in it?
It was just a very slow process. We had just a few bottles. But yeah, I would say start small, and even just seeing houseplants grow is a really special thing. So you can do that. Microgreens are actually really easy. Microgreens, because you can take tons and tons of different types of lettuces and leafy greens, like any of the brassica plant family, which is like broccoli, kale, collard greens, cauliflower. They have really yummy microgreens. You basically just throw the seeds in like a wet paper towel. Even there's tons of different ways to do it. A thin layer of soil. You can literally do it in like a little tray, like the size of your phone. You just throw the seeds on it, water them, and get them daylight. And in 2 weeks, they'll be like an inch tall, and just snip them and you can eat them. And seeing that growth process is really exciting. And then getting to eat that food, that's like an easy, easy is not a fair word. That's a straightforward, somewhat simple, very, very inexpensive way to grow a little something. And if you don't want to grow anything, you're like scared of that, then what I would say is when you're walking, just pay attention to the plants that are growing all around you, even in the cracks in the sidewalks. And you can even, again, the internet is a wonderful resource, and use it as that. So be like, you can sometimes, I swear it works sometimes, you just type into Google, plant that has spiky leaves that's growing in the sidewalk, and like one of the top 3 hits will probably identify it appropriately. Oftentimes it's going to be dandelion, which is edible and is one of the 5 different types of maror listed in the Mishnah. You're welcome.
How much research have you done? Is this the stuff that you were always interested in as a child? Or, I mean, cause it's amazing to me. I mean, I've met people that have, tremendous breadth of Torah. I've met people that are really into gardening, but I don't think I've ever met anybody that could talk about weeds and where they're listed in the Mishnayos.
It is a fun niche that I've created for myself. I will say that. And for my team, we like love to nerd out on this. We have a Slack. If you don't use Slack, you should use Slack. It's great. Email's terrible. Slack is great. So we have a Slack channel, just like garden resources. We just always share like random things that we find. and we'll just say like, okay, guys, I met someone at the school who's geeking out with me on like Mishnayot of Kilayim. Let's go. So, kindred spirits, we work together, we find each other, and then we're everywhere. Some of you watching are probably like us. Join us in our evolution.
Well, I guess now's a good time maybe for a plug. People that are watching that either are very interested in this stuff and want to volunteer with you, or people that want to bring you out to their schools. I know you already have 10 new ones, but how could people, what's the best way to reach out to you? I mean, if they don't have Slack.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, first of all, and I really, really appreciate the generosity to plug our work. What I will say is actually we want to open up a public Slack channel for like garden questions. It might be a semi-public next year for all teachers who work with us. But until then, the easiest way is you can just email us through our website. We have a contact form, and we'll respond to you within I think 24 to 48 hours. Whatever it says on the website, we'll stick to it. And if we don't, we'll send you free stickers and seeds.
What's your website address?
Stickers. It's super, super complicated. It's that.org.
Okay.
Technology.
I've got to ask also, I forget where I saw this. I don't know if you told it to me or I saw you post it somewhere. Thought it was really cool. I think your business cards are actually plantable. Is that correct?
They are, yeah. They're you can get seed paper, so paper embedded in seeds. You can actually make your own paper. It's not very complicated. It's not very expensive. It's kind of complicated, but you can make your own paper. We went ahead and ordered business cards from this company that makes plantable business cards. So people do wedding invitations, and that actually is a great example of like, all right, we have this challenge of like, I don't want to create business cards because number one, nobody actually cares about them. They just throw them out. So it's just creating waste. It's like, I know that this is going to get thrown out. Like what, 90% of the 500 business cards I print are going to get thrown out. So, okay, maybe half of the people are going to recycle it. Still not great to make something, is just going to have to get repurposed with energy, exerted to process it. So yeah, then we're like, wait a second, these plantable business cards, if only 5% of the people plant them, at least they planted them and there's flowers. And I think a lot of people are like, I planted your business card. It's so cool. So it's really fun. And they also decompose faster and better. So even if they don't get planted, they still have that.
That's awesome. I love
and they're
it.
super memorable. So like from a marketing perspective, nailed it.
Yes. Going back to the question we had before about, how to benefit if you're not able to garden. So actually, I just wanted to point out what I thought was a really cool study. There's a hospital that randomly assigned 2 groups of gallbladder patients that had surgery on their gallbladder. Have you heard of this study?
My wife actually researched this for her in her like college senior thesis or something.
Oh, that's so cool. What are the chances?
Well, she's married to me, so.
So they split up these 2 groups. So one group, after they had gallbladder surgery, they're wheeled to a regular hospital room with just blank walls, yellow, white, whatever color. The second group was put into rooms that were designed for the study that just had a very nice picture of a tree on the wall. And what they found is that the people that were in the group that were wheeled to the rooms with the tree on the wall, so those patients required less pain medication, had lower ratings of pain throughout, and were discharged quicker with less complications than the patients wheeled to the regular hospital rooms, which is fascinating. Just seeing a picture, not even a real picture, it's a drawing of a picture. That alone, again, it's a hierarchy. So we know that, going for a nature walk or actively gardening is the best thing you could do. And then kind of being in real nature is second best, but third best, and you're going to see real benefits, both physically and mentally, is having this drawn picture of some nature object in front of you in the hospital room or wherever.
So then you should definitely follow us on Instagram and social media, obviously. That's the logical conclusion I'm deriving.
I imagine you guys send out lots of your pictures for people to benefit from.
We post lots of pretty pictures of plants and some of people. Lately, it's been a lot of people. We'll go back to plants for all those of you who care.
Okay. Today, I actually came across a study that I found really fascinating as well, which was just saying not only could pictures do it, just hearing nature sounds could really improve your mental well-being. And Yosef, right before we started, for the last 5 hours, I've actually been playing these nature sounds on my computer. I've been listening to it all day because I heard the benefits. So if you've got to be at an office job all day, turn on YouTube, listen to some nature sounds, and then every so often go on Instagram to look at GrowTorah's pictures.
Do you want to play those for the last few minutes? Do you want to play those nature sounds? I mean,
we'll leave it for now. But I encourage everyone to go on and find their own nature sounds that speak to them.
Nice.
We had another question, and we addressed it a little bit, but maybe to go more into it. They say your positivity is clear and contagious. Does it come naturally to you, or is it something that you cognizantly work on? So I know you mentioned that you kind of were given permission by, I think, Rabbi Tani Prero, to kind of express yourself in that way. But is it something that still you have to work on, or is it something that now is just so natural and it's hard for you kind of not to express it even?
Yes, it is. It is both. Yes, and yes. It is something that totally comes natural to me. Thank God, I'm blessed with that. And it is something that since probably, I think, 7th grade, I started to get really into Pirkei Avos, and I've learned it like many, many times since. It's the only thing I've learned. And like, Hevim Makabel es kol ha'adam b'sever panim yafos, to like greet everyone with a cheerful countenance. So I feel like just in life, that's a really important thing to try to do. And I try to live that. And I actively work on that because I actively also get annoyed with people and don't like people. So I try to fix that by really just being done the Catskills, also to like see the good in everyone. And anyone who knows me well knows that I am definitely, I'm not always happy. But it is very much a part of my nature and part of my nurture as well. Definitely both. And I recommend it to everyone.
So, obviously, as I think I'm hoping for an answer with this, but, you just mentioned, people who know that you're not always super happy. Well, what has drawn you to gardening and really exploring nature?
I explored teaching just straight up in the classroom, and I was not as fulfilled, and I was definitely a less happy version of myself then than I was now. And I started to see in the summers, I was working at this camp that I had mentioned, and at some other camps doing gardens and plants, and I just saw myself. I was so much happier teaching with a garden as a classroom, or with nature as my classroom, than I was just with like walls as my classroom and a smart board that was always broken. And so for me, that was really important. And I spent many years in Batei Medrash, and I love learning in the base Medrash, and I love learning, but to do that all day was a huge struggle for me. And it wasn't something I wanted to commit myself to for the rest of my life. I wanted to try to find a different way. And so I'm really, really, really lucky and blessed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu totally hooked it up for me, and piloted the first garden at Frisch just because of a summer garden that we had built for the camp that rents the building. And then once I started that one thing, that one garden, then I started telling people like, yeah, I really want to do this full time. I would love to find a way to do this. And I talk a lot, and people heard, and word spread. And then the first few schools actually came to me to ask me if I could build a program for them. So I was really, really blessed to do that. But there was definitely some struggles before that I'm kind of whitewashing. It was really tough. I had a really hard time before that.
Sure. So, the first time I met you and the first time I actually heard about this was at the OU Impact Accelerator. And I remember thinking, wow, this is so different. This is so amazing. I mean, your presentation I was blown away by, and it clicked. It made so much sense to me. And it was just, why are we not focusing on this? And, now I'm thinking back to the podcast I often listen to called How I Built This. And the host of it, Guy Raz, he asked everybody, what percent do you think was luck, and what do you think percent was hard work? And
Yes.
I'll change it a little bit because this is a Jewish program. So what percent do you think was siyata d'shmaya? What was God's hand in helping you, and what percent was your hard work? And part of why I asked that is because I imagine there's other people out there listening right now, other people that will listen to this in the future, that may have really unique ideas as well, and just think, it's just too much work to kind of get the community to buy into it. So I'm curious, to hear from you, what % of it was your hard work and what % was Siyata D'Shmaya?
I love that question. I love how I built this. Guy Raz, you better listen to this video. Let's all just like tag him if he sees this and hears this. And I hope he answers it with Siyata D'Shmaya. I would say, I actually answer you with a garden metaphor, which is it's all Siyata D'Shmaya. Like all of our tefillos, so much of our tefillos are centered around rain and like us davening for tefillas HaGeshem, tefillas HaTal, just like the agricultural cycles.